Good evening, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. Been thinking about some words again. And so I wanted to talk to you about a certain word called surplusage. And we're going to do our little breakdown on the word surplusage again. Or not again, but we're going to do a breakdown again, this time on the word surplusage. And when we look at the word surplusage, in the regular court system, in regards to the way they use it in cases and stuff, generally it's an attorney using the concept of surplusage as somebody trying to present a defense in a case after the fact of the case already being started and defenses being available. And this is the importance of addressing this stuff right from the very beginning. And that's about, or look at the word surplusage. We see two things in there that have to do with measures. One is a measure of something, and another is a measure of time. And so we're going to break that word surplusage down into its three parts. And so first we're going to look at it in the first two direct words. Okay, we're going to try it in here. I generally get a better reception in here. So when we break down that word surplusage, we see the two main components right off the bat. And remember, I always talk about root word. Three things, and this is the reason for this post, is etiology is the root cause, etymology is the root word, and then epistemology is root knowledge. Okay, and that's what we're going to be talking about here in regards to the word surplusage and another word I'm going to talk about. So when we break down the word surplusage, we see right away, like I said, we're talking about two different types of measure, and so we see right away the root word is plus. And so we know it's a mathematical thing. It's a measure. Okay? Well, what is it a measure of? Well, it's a measure of a surplus. So it's an addition, and that's why it's a plus. And that's the measure of the something. Okay? We started out with something at the beginning, a certain event, and then as the timeline went along, in the course of events, something was added to it. And this is what they use in the courts. They say, well, along the course of events, he added something that didn't belong initially. Okay? So when somebody tries to present a defense that wasn't included from the beginning by complete reservation of rights per se, then they forego that. And so that's what the concept of surplusage is in the legal sense. Now, that same concept applies elsewhere in the literal sense if you know how to use it. And that is, and I'm going to use UCC 1-207, UCC 1-208 as a comparison to show you how this works. Because what happened was with UCC 1-207, it poofed. Okay? There was information along a timeline that poofed. Well, what they did was they didn't actually poof it. It's not gone. They changed it. What they did was they took it out, changed the wording, and reinserted it in different ways. It's still there. Okay? So in the sense of surplusage, we're going to look at the word age, and that's the other message, or the other measure. That's the measure of time. You have event after event after event, and they go in an order of time, and they each have their own term of an age, and that term of an age is the measure. So if you had something that happened on August 1st, and it resulted in a citation, and the next event was supposed to be an appearance in court, according to them, there's also other things that we know of that we can do prior to prevent the appearance in court. Okay? And so when they say that you sign that citation and you promise to appear or pay, that's surplusage. Because there are things that are prior to that you can do that prevent you from having to go to that stage. So, and yes, Justin Nolan mentioned moved it to 1-308, 1-103.3, 3-402B, correct. I like you using that. 3-402B, subpart 1, people. Remember this. Every signature you give is an authorized representative, and as an authorized representative in a commercial realm, you are not liable, and it is that 3-402B, subpart 1. Read that, understand that. You have been assumed, presumed, and implied to be authorized representative on every financial instrument you've ever signed. And you can tell this by the checks that they issue through the Federal Reserve, associated branch banks. That little line on that checkbook says authorized authorized signature all the way across there, all capital letters in micro print. It's not a line. So remember that. So then, anyway, back to surplusage, that's the concept. It's all mathematical. Like I keep telling everybody, everything's mathematical. So when we break down that word surplusage, we see the root word using etymology is plus. So plus, and they add the prefix to it, sur, making a surplus, meaning they've added something to something. They now have an additional something to the original something. And then they add the suffix age, which denotes a timeline. Okay? It's like the ant in defendant. It's a timeline measure. It means something is it's already happened. So, surplusage means you have something you shouldn't. Well, what do you mean? Shouldn't everybody have extra? Well, now we're going to talk about the word abundant. Term, abundant. We hear this in the Bible. It's one of the words I use all the time in the reference to the origin. The cause of my authority is the way I believe it, and that's Genesis 1:26 through 28. God created man in his image so they could go forth and prosper and be abundant. What is abundant? Well, we see by the prefix, it's something. It's a. Well, what's bund? Bund is an etymological root word for bound. They just never changed it. Or they changed the word to bound. Abundant means to have been bound. Well, if we're already bound, what are we bound with? We're bound with a free will. Nobody can take that away. That's inherent. And that's what abundant means. Go forth and prosper and be abundant. Be bound. Be bound to your free will to prosper. Don't be bound to somebody else's will for profit. That's bullshit. And so when we talk about surplusage in the sense of a timeline, it means to go back to the correct event where things matched up. The information matches the event. As you go along, information is to match with the events. If somewhere along the line the information doesn't match, surplusage. So again, when we're signing these traffic citations, there are other steps we can take instead of appearing in court or paying the fine. Those are merely two options they give you within their realm, which is surplusage. The entire commercial system is a surplusage to your natural, inherent, free will. Commerce is expensive and wasteful, not prosperous and abundant. If you're prosperous and abundant, you're bound. If you're profiting and saying you're bound, you're lying. All commerce is fraud. It is a surplusage that is not needed and is enforced as if though it's a requirement. Every financial instrument is bound by the document created to construct it. Surplusage. I have nothing to do with any creation of commerce. I only have what I need to do with it out of the doctrine of necessity that I hold within myself, because I'm living in this fucked up society. So when we talk about the word surplusage, we're not talking about a surplus in regards to being abundant. We're talking about something that's not needed because it's something that doesn't belong with the original source. Original cause. Etiology. Original word. Etymology. Original knowledge. Epistemology. Root cause, root word, root knowledge. Go back to it. Start over. And then start adding the information that belongs and make it correct. This is why it's so important to understand the words. I keep trying to convince people everything's backwards. Everything's backwards. In their legal system, when they use that word surplusage, it's a commercial term. It's a measure. Because in natural law, you don't have surplus. It's all usable. And all you have to do is use it. And that's all there is to it. There's no greed. You're freely given everything you need. And you're supposed to freely give everything you have, regardless. So remember those three words and start learning, or three terms, and start learning how to educate yourself from the beginning. Etiology. Etiology. Root cause. What was the root cause of a commercial system? A certain set of people's greed to have more than the rest, to have a surplus, so that they could prepare for future events they didn't have knowledge of. Etymology, etymology, root word. Root word comes from the root sound. The root word, as we know today, is in an English script art form called lettering, writing. Writing is also done with symbols, hieroglyphs, petroglyphs. It's all an art form. They're just different forms of art, all conveying the same thing, a written language. So we have to now go back to the root word as it was a word, not as it was written. Okay, now we talk about epistemology. EPISTEMOLOGY. Root knowledge. What's root knowledge? Root knowledge is mathematical, just like we talked about surplusage. When you learn the knowledge of how to break down that term so you can get to the truth. Root knowledge is the truth. So when you learn the root cause, discerned by the root words whether to be true, you now have the wisdom of whether it's knowledge or false. Again, I urge people to start learning these words so they can understand the terms and conditions that are made by attaching the prefixes and suffixes thereof. And remember, people, if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be doing this. Love y'all. Hope you have a great night. Bye.